are very mild compared to everything he introduced to us later in his life, all those radical inventions.
Secret services at the time in Vienna following him around. Some of us said, maybe this is Boulez, but the others were like, this cannot be Boulez.
To create this drama. Hello everyone and welcome back to the newest episode of What's on Vienna, your immersive guide into sometimes overwhelming world of classical music and arts events in the city. Coming up, few highlights for the second part of March, and after that, as usual, we will discuss some events we attended and some related topics.
So I'll go first, as per our mini tradition, and start with opera. So you know my thoughts about the whole thing. Go when you can, but if you can choose, they will go when I suggest. Just kidding. So for this month, the highlight for me at the Staatsoper Vienna is going to be Donizetti's Elixir of Love. Now, a super famous opera, very easy listening music, very silly, funny, comical storyline. Why did I decide to recommend this opera? Is because the superstar soprano singer Nadine Serra is going to be there for the performances on the 17th, 19th and 21st. Nadine Serra sang at the Vienna Opera Ball this year, which is of course a great honor even for very successful singers, and so now she is doing the Elixir of Love. Some of you who've heard the previous episode might remember that I did complain that she's one of the artists that I seem to have on my radar that I can never catch live, even though I'm trying really hard. So looks like the universe has listened to me, and now this is my lucky moment. I will be able to hear Nadine Serra at the Staatsoper in Elixir of Love. So
perfect. But what are the most comical elements of this opera?
Oh, you have to wait and see.
Maybe you have some personal experience.
No, I mean, I've seen this opera twice at the Staatsoper here in Vienna. That's how much I like it. So I don't know if it's going to be the same staging and the same directing. I fear it will be. So there's like same jokes.
Okay.
You know, that same kind of thing. I'm not a huge fan of that set, but it's like a classical, traditional, set, a little bit old school, but it's fun.
Yeah. Also in March, the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra is coming to Vienna on the 31st of March. They have a beautiful program with Klaus Mäkelä, with the First Symphony by Mahler and Verklärte Nacht by Arnold Schönberg, the Transfigured Night. The piece was not received well when it was first premiered in, I believe, 1902, just a few years after it was composed. So the original version is for the string sextet, and then later in life he arranged it for the string orchestra, the version you will hear on the 31st of March. There were two key reasons why it was not received well. The first one was musical. So according to the Vienna Music Society, Arnold Schönberg used one particular chord. We're not going to go into the details of that chord, that was non-existent. So they rejected the piece.
But some of us who might not know how the piece sounds, it's not like a typical atonal Schönberg piece, right?
Of course.
It's very late, romantic, lush, beautiful, fantastic music. So it's really big surprise that even that kind of writing was rejected.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote it, one of the earliest work of him. I think he was 25 when he wrote it. He was madly in love with his future wife, and it's a late romantic music, but it was shocking, which is, of course, you are completely right. It's very amusing because it's very mild compared to this so-called shocking elements of Transfigured Night are very mild compared to everything he introduced to us later in his life, all those radical inventions. He revolutionized the whole world of music.
Harmony.
Right? Yeah. So it is a bit amusing that even with that work he got in trouble. And another important aspect that this piece is based on the controversial at that time poem by Richard Demel that portrayed a storyline of a female character which was supposed to be judged and seemed immoral to the society of that time. So the fact that he used that poem for this piece was already enough to create this drama, many layers of drama. But of course, it's an amazing work, and I'm sure performed by this wonderful orchestra in combination with Mahler first, it will be a very special experience.
It's probably one of the most beautiful late romantic pieces.
Yes, I
if not
agree.
the most beautiful.
Yeah.
It depends on your taste.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. I will now try to dive into the world of pianists and piano playing. And I have highlighted two different people who are in completely different genres, but both incredible virtuosos and legends of their own right. The first one, this comes in the order of the concerts. On the 20th of March in the Vienna Concerthaus, jazz legend, virtuoso, just a phenomenon, Brett Mehldau, American pianist, is going to be performing a recital. Definitely something not to be missed by our jazz-loving audience. It's going to be really amazing evening. And then on the 28th of March, another pianist, but now in the classical world, Jevgenij Kissin, is going to be introducing a program of Bach, Chopin, and Shostakovich. I consider Jevgenij Kissin, in addition to all of his accolades and, the legend of his persona, very interesting from the perspective that piano world, in general, the world of performance arts, but especially piano, is oversaturated with young kids who are considered prodigies, who do a lot at a very young age, play extremely advanced programs, repertoire to competitions. And then a surprisingly small number of those children continue to have a career as adults that would match their childhood successes. There are really very few people who have managed to graduate from the child prodigy status into then becoming a phenomenon as an adult pianist. And Jevgenij Kissin is definitely one of those musicians. There are, of course, people who consider that his childhood persona was still more impressive than his current work. Regardless of what you think, he is definitely an absolute institution of his own and someone you probably should listen to once if you're interested in piano solo as a standalone genre.
Absolutely, yeah. This year the world celebrates 100 years birthday anniversary of Pierre Boulez, and on the 26th of March there were going to be a concert / conversation / discussion dedicated to this great persona who was not just a famous conductor and composer and a writer and a critic, but also he created so many institutions all around Europe who are still functioning today on the very high level to support composers, new music performers, and many other things. So it's his was a giant in a classical world.
I mean, he had a godlike status.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, and some of the participants of this event, concert / conversation, are going to be the Austrian composer Aimard Neuwirth, the intendant of the Musikverein, and Aimard, an amazing pianist who had very special relationship with Boulez. One of a kind. He was a protege of Boulez. He performed a lot of works by him. He worked intensely together. I think there was a highest level of mutual understanding, respect, admiration.
Well, I mean, Pierre-Laurent Aimard is the reference for new music performances, I would say, for piano repertoire. I mean, he is the version to listen to pieces, and like you mentioned, he has worked with all of the genius composers, probably all of them, of the second half of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And of course, Pierre Boulez was one of the greats that he worked with.
And both of them, they come from the same musical family, I would say. Boulez was studying with Messiaen, and Aimard was studying with the wife of Messiaen, who was legendary interpreter of his works.
Yeah,
so,
Yvonne Loriot. Yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
all the setup was there to create this beautiful relationship, and it's very special. It's going to be very special to experience this
Definitely.
evening with him performing and talking and discussing. I expect it to be very thought-provoking, stimulating event, and definitely something to check out.
And for those of you who might want to explore a little bit more of Pierre Boulez's world, his thoughts and works, this is actually a fantastic book called Orientations, which is which is a collection of his writings and essays organized in several parts that are talking about different composers, about aesthetic, about philosophy and beyond, and gives you an really incredible insight into the composer himself. I don't have the top cover with me, but this is just called Pierre Boulez Orientations. Definitely inspiring, interesting, thought-provoking reading that I strongly recommend, especially to musicians who might not have read it, but also to anyone who is interested in this very specific world. Yes.
But he, when he was very young, he suggested to burn all opera houses, right?
Bomb.
I'm sorry, I was not specific.
Level them, but then later in life he did.
Yeah.
He did change his thoughts, but definitely Pierre Boulez is Pierre Boulez. So,
but tell us about the story again, the metro story, the Parisian metro story.
Parisian metro. One time I was with a group of my friends as a student going to hear a concert which featured works of Pierre Boulez. It was by Ensemble Intercontemporain, a phenomenal new music ensemble that he himself had founded. And we were on the metro, and there was a very humble, normal-looking, very pleasant older gentleman standing, not even sitting, in the metro cart. And some of us said, maybe this is Boulez, but the others were like, this cannot be Boulez, because, I mean, the Boulez, no. And then we got off at the same station and walked to the same venue, and then it did turn out that it was indeed the Pierre Boulez. Yes, but Paris Metro, take a train in Paris and have fun.
This is our new tradition, to stories from the Parisian metro.
And then the last but not least recommendation, from a slightly different genre. Maybe it's not really art, but I couldn't not mention it. It's the Cirque du Soleil. Circus is coming to Vienna, as they do every year, and the performances have already started and will be going through the beginning of May with their, I think, new program, at least new to Vienna. It's called the Cabinet of Curiosities. I don't know what your thoughts are on circus, but Cirque du Soleil, I've seen them 2 times a very long time ago, but it was an unbelievable experience, also on the musical level, because the live performance that went together with the show and the costumes and the acrobatics was really unforgettable. It was so exciting and beautiful and just fabulous. And for that we already have our tickets a long time ago, so we'll be seeing it on the 23rd of March. But if you're really into circus, then Cirque du Soleil is probably the circus to enjoy. I think that's it for today.
So before we jump into the next section where we will review some stuff, please like, subscribe, and if you have any questions or recommendations, please write a comment, and see you in a moment.
Welcome back to the second half of our episode, the review portion. Today, as last time, we will be starting with a review of an opera performance. This time it is Norma. Some of you might remember from our previous episode that January had happened to be, so to speak, Battle of Normas in Vienna. Vienna State Opera and Theater an der Wien the two biggest houses in the city, have both staged the Norma. People who are really into opera world, have been trying to go to both, have been purchasing tickets to compare. It was a whole thing amidst opera lovers. And I did not manage to get tickets for Theater an der Wien, but of course I did go to the State Opera. The final verdict is that the Battle of Normas was a fail on both sides. Neither of the production lived up to the expectation. That was unfortunately the consensus. And even though I didn't go to Theater an der Wien, I was able to watch a video online, and I can say that what I heard did not impress me either. Now, I went on the day of the opening of the premiere. Obviously, when we say premiere, opening night in opera world, we do not mean music. What we mean is the staging and the costumes, and there was like a whole thing around this amazing staging, and people were divided on whether they liked it or not. I cannot say that I'm one of those people who is very strict with staging and wants only very traditional or very modern. It doesn't, unless it's really something horrible, it doesn't really take away from my ability to enjoy the performance, because I am mostly concentrated on the music, on the singing, and the performance of the orchestra. But unfortunately, what I heard at the State Opera, the singing part, was not what I had expected it to be. And I am, like in the previous episode, I am not comparing what I heard to the magnificent, gold standard recordings of the past. I have heard very good Normas at the State Opera in the city and other places over my life. And this was not really at that level, unfortunately. The success and the reception was incredibly warm. People were super enthusiastic. The applause and the clapping and the stomping with the feet was there, which made me feel a little bit strange, because I thought, why am I so disconnected from the audience? But I was in a way very glad to read that the critic was pretty bad, and basically I completely agree with what was in the critique. And also the people who really go to opera a lot, some of them are my friends, had shared my opinion completely. So that was not a big hit. That was definitely a little bit on the miss side from my part. Yeah. Unfortunately. How were your concert experiences this month?
I went to the concert of Rudolf Buchbinder with the Schubert program, and it was amazing. That was one of those experiences that when you are listening, you understand that you will remember it for decades, and you will reflect on that, and you really try to catch the essence and everything that's happening in that moment, and how he does it, and the magic of the sound. It was very special, very special. He's of course one of the that generation that is unfortunately not with us anymore, or at least musically not with us anymore. The Alfred Brendel, who is around 15 years older than him, right? Who would be personally my first choice for Schubert music interpretation, and we had a chance to work with him, and it was completely, absolutely fantastic. But
so
he stopped
the next
playing.
generation, you mean the younger generation?
So Buchbinder is a kind of next generation, but he's a part of that
tradition
epoch and that tradition. And so it was very special. And also you might know that Musikverein has the meet and greet events after some of the concerts, where you go downstairs to one of the smaller halls, and there is usually a discussion on a particular topic. I'm always surprised that not so many people go there. Also, the Golden Hall, the big hall of Musikverein, is huge, and then I don't know, maybe 100 people go downstairs. But I think not so many people know about that.
But now you do.
Yeah.
Now you do. Go when you have a chance.
It's surprising, because it is on the calendar, and it is not on the ticket, maybe that's why. I don't know, but on the positive side of it, it's also a nice feeling because it feels very intimate and you're very close to the artist, and it's very special when you experience the artist speaking about important, interesting topics right next to you. And the topic this year is how do we live with each other together in this world where the level of polarization of opinions and worldviews is higher and higher with every year. And I think the idea is to discuss this topic with all the artists that they are welcoming and hosting at the Musikverein. And one of the interesting and of course very relevant topic is politics and culture. If artists should be vocal about their views, if they should speak out or should it be separated. I was pleasantly surprised by Rudolf Buchbinder's answer about that he thinks that the artist should speak up. Although he mentioned that of course it matters what exactly do they say, but I mean there is no mechanism to differentiate that obviously. But I was surprised because very often in the older generation of artists you see the view that it shouldn't be mixed, and it's not the task of the artist, which I think can't be true anymore in the world that it is today. I don't think we have a privilege not to divide those, and in its essence, in my personal opinion, it's undividable, because I mean we are so as musicians, as performers, we are so naked on the stage. We are open and we search for the truth in ourselves in music, and we just can't somehow cut this part of us in case it is a part of us as a human beings. And what do you think? Why is there such an urge to sometimes to have art stay apolitical, so to say?
I think it's just part of the agenda to sometimes silence relatively educated parts of the society, relatively informed, reflective people. So it's like a cliche, we divide you. And I think that's a very old school, very restrictive approach that a lot of young people or people of middle generation, so to say, do not agree with, of course. And it is of course impossible to silence the art and the artist, thankfully. And art is almost always political. Schubert, that you're talking about, had been himself a very political person.
Of course.
Had secret services at the time in Vienna following him around, and also Beethoven. Although Beethoven was considered no danger person because of his disability, but Schubert didn't have a disability, and he was very charming, and he had a big group of people, his friends, who adored him and supported him. So this is no surprise. As an artist, you do have oftentimes very strong opinions on relevant events, on society, on all sorts of things, and especially in tough times and difficult times, it is impossible and unnecessary to hold back your opinions. Of course, there are people maybe at earlier stages of their careers who are a little bit worried that it might cost them some problems and some connections, but I think this too is starting to pass. There are less people who are trying to people please and kind of occupy both sides of the of the board because of how polarized things are becoming. It is now very difficult to be diplomatic. And
it becomes very dangerous not to speak up, after all. Of course.
Sure. I mean, some people can live with that. Other people suffer if they have not said something. I'm definitely the second time of person. Whenever there's been a situation that I maybe didn't express myself fully, I have felt very bad about it later. And the remorse I had felt later was definitely something that taught me a lesson that I should really try to speak to the best of my ability in the moment. But we're all different. However, I think that the majority of artists, especially music field, performance fields, is quite political.
And there are now a lot of great examples like Lisa Batiashvili, like Tetzlaff and others who really speak up. But it's still a bit unusual. I would say, in the industry.
But the times are changing, most definitely, in all aspects of
absolutely
our lives.
Absolutely. So it's definitely, I mean, for me personally, a very interesting topic that we might discuss some other time, more in depth. But for today, that's it. Thank you for watching and or listening if it was on Spotify or iTunes. And please subscribe, like, and let us know about the questions you might have, or maybe some information that might be interesting that we can discuss next time. Bye.
Bye.